that of white women. The experience of disabled women is different than able-bodied women, and so forth. So we do a lot of activism. We also advocate for CCSF. One of the main reasons that we were formed in September of 2019 was in response to class cuts for fall, which were largely of ethnic studies. So we're hosting Virtually Feminist. A number of you have submitted to it. We've had 14 whole submissions. If you haven't seen our page, you should totally go through it and sign the guest book, or try one of these tasty recipes that we asked you guys to send, because in a traditional opening, we would have a meal and we'd get to know you that way. We wanted to try and capture that feeling because we want this to feel communal and be emotionally supportive. Given the subject matter that we have, people will probably, we will be touching on things like domestic violence and sexual violence. And while these won't be graphic, we felt like you should have a trigger warning for it. We support particularly Women's and Gender Studies Department, and I will have our lovely talk to you about that.
Hi, so my name's Era, and I'm also part of CCSF Collective. And so we're affiliated with the Women's and Gender Studies Department by first originating from the Women's Resource Center, then also extending towards the Women's and Gender Studies faculty. So the department is spearheaded by Maggie Harrison, and then currently the summer courses involved Intro to Women's Studies, along with our stories too. So both of it's full, but if you're interested in the fall 2020 semester, then I'll send a link later on with a way for you to sign up for that too. So Proud to Survive is also part of the Women's and Gender Studies, and that is a peer educator program dedicated towards ending sexual violence and promoting healthy relationships, right? It's about having a community of people that full-heartedly believe that rape is never, ever the victim's fault. It lies on all of us coming together to address these concerns through like sharing resources, but also providing a supportive community too. And then a way to get involved in Project Survive is through the Women and Gender Studies 54 class, which is Politics of Sexual Violence, and Women's and Gender Studies 55 class, which is the peer educator portion of the class too. So after taking those two, you're able to be a peer educator. And then if we go to the next slide, we're gonna watch a video, and this was from our event during December, which is called Crescendo, a build-up of collective voices. And then this event was specifically geared towards the Women's and Gender Studies department, along with the arts department too. And then it was when we were trying to advocate for the emergency bridge funding, which is getting $2.7 million from the city reserves in order to reinstate the spring semester classes. Because during spring 2020, unfortunately, classes were cut to the point where the majority of, I believe, around 100 art-related classes were cut. And then classes such as the only women's history class was cut, along with self-defense too. But that is now reinstated during this fall. So you'll be seeing the department chair, Maggie Harrison, talk about the history of the Women's and Gender Studies department, along with Veronica Fulbright, who is part of the Project Survive program.
And we're mighty, right? We exist, so it's not every community college has a Women's and Gender Studies department, right? This is unique. This is, well, not entirely unique, but it's unusual, right? And why do we have this? It's because of the history of activism in San Francisco, right? It's because of the student strikes at San Francisco State, where students demanded a culturally relevant education. They demanded an education that was meaningful to them, that reflected them and their lives and their concerns. And that spread. That activism had ripples, and the impact was felt here at our community college, and as a result we have what's now called the Ethnic Studies and Social Justice Collaborative, where we get, but then the other piece of it is they become a community, right? So the peer educators who learn to, who are trained to do this work, they work together to support one another.
And just be who they are. And I just try to let them know, like, it's okay, Like, it's okay for you to say say how you feel, be how you feel, do how you feel. Like, you have to be confident within yourself and love yourself for others to respect that. It's just a lot of things that we have been like taught that is not so good. It's not so positive that, like, even for me, like, when I came up, I say you guys, right? I've been working with Project Survive for like 2 years, 3 years now, and I'm still learning. It's a lot of unlearning that we have to do that takes a long time because we have been taught that for so long, and so it takes a lot of time for you to like, it's just like, I gotta work on that, Just acknowledge that for yourself, inside of yourself. So that's what I try to teach my kids, is to acknowledge that in yourself, and I also try to teach that to my clients. So that has really been my journey with Project Survive. I didn't know what Project Survive was going to lead me to. I just thought it was going to be like me getting back into school, taking this, and then to sexual violence class. I didn't know it was going to be therapeutic. I didn't know it was going to lead to my career path. I didn't know all these things. I was just like, hey, I need to get back in school. My best friend's like hounding me, like, girl, you need to get back in school. You need to get your shit together. And so I didn't know that it was going to lead to all of this, but I'm grateful that I took Women's 55 and I joined Project Survive, and Project Survive, being as awesome as they are, had all these extra activities and all these extra programs for me to join, and I'm just glad that I took advantage of it.
So we're going to move into the gallery for the rest of the evening. We'll have 2 intermissions just so that you're not having to stare at a screen. The intermissions will be about 5 minutes long. Leda, this is your submission. It was a digital collage that you did. I want it on a t-shirt. Do you want to talk about like your inspiration or how you view feminism?
Oh my gosh. So I love this idea that it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the nurtured, which is, I basically stole that from Tara Brach, who is a Buddhist teacher, meditation teacher. And, I just think it's so critically important that we all realize how traumatized everybody is walking around on the planet, and that most of us are suffering from some sort of childhood trauma, whether it was from like benign neglect, where parents just didn't know how to nurture and make sure that their kids are being seen and heard, and feel valid and like they matter and like their ideas matter and their feelings matter and their thoughts matter. I think a lot of people think trauma is just something, more severe, like a lot of people are experiencing right now, like racism and poverty and violence as they're growing up. But even benign neglect causes trauma. And I think most people are walking around traumatized, and that we all need to like reparent ourselves and take care of all of our inner children that were not seen and not heard and never felt like they mattered. And I feel like the world is full of people who are, hurt, and hurt people hurt people. And so I'm really interested in like how we all start to heal ourselves with the idea that if we take care of ourselves and put self-care first and really now reparent and nurture all the parts of ourselves that never got to be seen and heard, including the parts of ourselves that are very angry for not having an opportunity to be seen and heard. I think it's just, I'm so excited about all of the self-care talk that's going on, because I feel like we all need that so much. Like we really need to like have a place for our grief to be seen and heard, and our anger and our fury and our nihilism and our self-hatred, like all of the darkness that most of us have somewhere inside of us, has a place and deserves to be respected and heard and seen. And we have no place for that in our society and in our culture. And I'm hoping my work is I'm just now declaring myself an artist after a long career of being a producer for visionary creative men. And I'm finally producing for the visionary creative man that lives within me. And I want, one of my first projects is that I want to do is like a grief garden where people can come and actively grieve. And I believe that we all need to carve out time for grief and to honor the losses that we all inevitably feel, including the loss of like the world we all know is possible if only we could solve so much of this dysfunction and smash the patriarchy. Then, you know, there's just like, I feel like I have so much like rage and grief over the fact that I have very little power over that. And, you know, being a single mom and being an overachiever, I've just worked and worked and worked my whole life and ignored so many parts of myself that wanted to be seen and heard. So this thing that I posted was kind of, it's funny that you chose it because it was one of the first, it's kind of the first thing I posted that's art that I've made. I have been, as I said, like supporting creative artists, male artists, like my whole life. And have made a bit, somehow this pandemic has changed something in me where I'm just no longer going to do that. So thank you for choosing it. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. If anybody has any questions about like, how do you nurture your inner children? How do you nurture the parts of yourselves that you can barely even stand to let yourself feel? I have a lot of amazing tools, and I'm just now starting to work with people to help people like find a way to access their voice and all the different parts of ourselves that don't have an opportunity to come out and be experienced by ourselves and other people. So yeah, I think that's it.
Hey, Leda, it's Tracy. You mentioned this grief garden, and that sounds really amazing. And a lot of the work that I do has a lot to do with grief and allowing people to feel that, wanting to make spaces to feel that way. So I'm just really interested. Do you have more ideas about this grief garden, or like what kind of space would that be?
Yeah, I mean, like right now I'm just thinking like, what could I actually do that won't cost any money? So I have an idea about doing it in my yard. I have a really beautiful space. And I'm toying with like the idea of doing it one-on-one, and also like grieving groups together that would, where I would guide you through kind of like an art making process where you make something, and then we go up and we bury part of it and you take part of it with you. And I would incorporate some breath work in there to help you like access the grief, because I really feel like I have this image of grief and also like other feelings that we just like don't want to feel, or even if like we've done a lot of work and we are like trying so hard to like feel my feelings, sometimes you just can't feel them because they just really don't feel good. And I have this image of it as like a black eel inside of a bucket of black liquid in the dark, and you're trying to like grasp onto it so that you can like deal with it, but you just can't get it. And so I have this breath work that I do that I think helps you to be able to actually feel the feelings. So I would want to incorporate that into this experience. And then I'd want it to be like you leave, you know, there'd be like a little headstone where you bury your thing, whatever this piece of art is, in the ground, and you could come back and, you know, kind of like schedule time to grieve, because I feel like we get so busy and we don't want to feel it that it's really easy to just not do it. So it would be like something you could come back to. So I don't know, I guess it's more of like a grief garden cemetery. I have a spot out in my yard where I want to start this garden / cemetery.
Cool, thanks. That sounds super awesome.
Yeah, this is Vic. I feel like Leda, what you said was it really hit home as far as like I forget that like I'm grieving and there's guilt and there's shame, and there's so much anger that that the rest of society turns on us and then we turn on ourselves. So yeah, thank you for that. It was it really hit home. So
yeah, and if anybody does want to do this breath work stuff that I'm doing, I offer for free. If you want to, I can guide you on Zoom. It's very simple, and then you can just do it yourself after that. But it's really been amazing for me to be able to access some really dark feelings that are scary. Yeah, something about that, like I have this idea right now that the inner nihilist in me also needs nurturing. I don't know, I'm into this idea of like we can't, like, maybe some of it doesn't need to be banished. Like clearly cynicism and nihilism and evil and confusion, it exists. Like how do we, if we nurture it a little bit, it'll calm down, it'll just be in a container and it won't rule us,
I had a question. Is there a scientific aspect to this? Because, there's Darwinian implications, right? Survival of the fittest is the counterpoint. But you also have the background is space, so it has cosmic implications as well. And potentially this background here is solar. Is that correct at all? Am I on the right path?
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, if I had a higher power, it's nature. It's, I think that we've interpreted survival of the fittest in a way that, I mean, I don't know what Darwin initially meant exactly, but the way that it's happening isn't working because we're not surviving, even though we're the top of the food chain. So absolutely, I see the idea of like nurturing ourselves is more sustainable and like more aligned with how things work in nature. I don't know if this is making sense, but yeah.
Wondering if that photograph is like from an archive or from your own
It's
story.
Not my own. No, I took it off of Canva. I wish it was my own. Let's pretend that I shot it and everything. Let's pretend it's me and my son.
Can I ask, was there a function to like the lines that were coming off of it? Because it kind of gives me the halo impressions so it's giving me like notes of like religion. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I thought about that while I was making it, and I tend to do a lot of that. And I thought about it as like the sun. At first, I was like, oh, I need there to be sunshine in here. But yeah, I mean, I feel, I'm basically grew up with like from a long line of feminist atheists. So I consider myself like an atheist, but I'm also find myself gravitating towards spiritual stuff. But it's all like around nature. So I'm really like anti-organized religion. So I feel like this was more of like a reference to the sun for me.
That's fair. I mean, I think for me, like religion has always played a kind of an interesting space. Like I've always kind of tried to like negotiate feminism into it instead of like, I mean, all institutions, right, perpetrate oppression. So yeah, thank you for that.
Catherine, it's a selection of your works from the Selfie series, which you made for supporting sex workers, and I see that you have a number of them behind you as well. Would you like to talk about it?
Sure, thanks. Yes, I've put some paintings up behind me. My apartment is my studio. This is a bike. It's very like not a studio in the traditional sense. Um, these paintings came about as I think about portraiture and selfies. Right before this, I snapped like 20 selfies of myself. Hello, I put on earrings, I put makeup on, like, yeah, I'm feeling myself. So, selfies are part of my culture, and I know they're part of mainstream culture. Um, the first portraits, um, I mean, I think that selfies and portraits, they send a message. So the first portraits, like, the first paintings from way back, they were always portraits of nobility. The first photos.
Well, good morning, everybody.
And like the first paintings were of nobility. So I think like the ability to have flattering photos of yourself, it's kind of a polarized, like charged meaning, there's class, there's social, there's cultural implications to having a flattering photo of yourself. Selfies, they're kind of a new kind of portrait where, in the picture, you're holding the phone, you're holding the camera, and, that comes about, in the early 2000s, smartphones, social media. And I think that to take a selfie is to kind of take back that power that was once reserved for the nobility, for the rich, for the people who had access to a commissioned painter or a private photographer. To take a selfie is to take back that power for people who are marginalized in society. So in these portraits, I recreate mirror selfies taken by sex workers and sex positive individuals, with their consent, of course, from various online platforms that have fallen under the radar of the 2018 SESTA-FOSTA bill. That's, if you don't know, that's a bill that came about April 2018. SESTA stands for Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. FOSTA allows states and victims to fight online sex trafficking act. And these are, like, I would say, neoliberal policies designed to punish traffickers. A lot of politicians, they feel like, we got child trafficking, like that's a thing, we need to stop that. And in a sense, like, yes, these bills might have stopped a few crimes, but I think as like time has passed since that bill has passed, it's actually made it harder for consensual sex workers to make a living. And we're feeling the repercussions of this bill to today, like they shut down a really important site for sex workers, Backpage, and even today on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Reddit, which is where I got a lot of these photos too. They are feeling the repercussions of that bill with like the heightened censorship laws. So I feel like in that way, it's a way that, again, power and like the government, it's like, again, their attempt to silence those who have tried to claim some power. For sex workers, selfies are their power. It's a way for them to get work or to conduct their work, and it means so much more. I would argue that like selfies are more like broadly, they're a way for all women to reclaim power. Like it just seems like a stigma that like, oh, girls are taking selfies of themselves, and it's written off as like infantile, something girls do, something that's not serious. Like on LinkedIn, you don't see selfies, you see like professional photos. So I argue that like selfies are a way for all women to reclaim their power. In these paintings, I try to praise the bravery and of just loving and accepting yourself, because that's, a brave act for sex workers, for women. I'm really inspired by religious iconography. It was really interesting that we were talking about it, especially Russian Orthodox iconography. I grew up very religious. I'm from Texas originally. I don't know what you've heard or if you've been there, but I basically grew up in a cult. Like, I went to church 5 times a week. So even as an adult in California, you know, I can choose parts of that to keep, parts of that that are not me, you know, decide for myself. But it will always be a part of my artwork and like my worldview. I'm really inspired by Bible stories too. Like, you know, they were my first stories. How could I ever forget them? Of heroic sex workers. You know, Mary Magdalene is one of the most respected figures in the church, like to this day, you know, but she's a sex worker. And like that, you know, we'll downplay that and talk about her faith and her contributions and like how close she was to Jesus, but she was a sex worker. And like, as much as that role is downplayed, I think it's really, I mean, maybe it's just me like romanticizing that role, you know, with my artwork. So that's why I put like halos. I get like the really thin halos ideas from Russian Orthodox iconography, because I've lived in Russia, and again, that's a different part of my faith, and I just love exploring churches and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm open to any questions, or I've created more selfies too.
You have a lot more on your site. They're very impressive.
Catherine, can I ask, like, when you, I assumed like you shared these pieces with the original artists, like the original sex workers who took these pictures, like what were their responses to these pieces?
So it's interesting that I feel like because of like the increased like censorship on websites where they'll share the photo, I'll say like, this is the project I'm doing, I'll let you know, then I won't hear from them again. So I'm thinking like a lot of them are maybe like under high security, they're creating throwaway accounts, you know, maybe, you know, the nature of the work that it's not consistent, maybe they've like moved on to other work. So I don't get a lot of responses, but yeah, which is kind of sad. I would love to like close that loop and, you know, offer the pictures back to them.
I love your work. I'm Tashina, and just, I mean, looking at these, I didn't think, I mean, I'm glad that I got to hear you talk about each piece or about your inspiration. And I really see like how important it is to be able to see these women, you know, maybe in ways that they don't often see themselves, and especially, you know, a lot of women, not just those in sex work, but women in general. And I loved how you looked at it as a form of empowerment. You know, I love that. So thank you so much for sharing your work, and thank you for making these women, you know, visible in such a beautiful way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Kaylee, and I just really want to compliment these pieces. I think they're amazing and they were beautifully done. And then I had a comment about like the halo figure, but you had answered that, and I think the way that, I believe like Lindsay said in the comments, that the way that you collided the religion and sex work is such a controversial topic, and you put it together really well, and it's I think it's beautiful. It does a lot, and you did a really good job. So thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to share, there's another really well-known parable in the Bible that I'm sure if you grew up in the church, you've heard it a million times. It's about like this, it's like Jesus is sitting with his disciples and a woman donates like only 2 coins. And the disciples are like, oh, what, only 2 coins? Like, is that how much she loves the church? And is that how much she respects you? And Jesus was saying like, no, like that donation means more than anything, because like 2 coins, that's like most of her salary. Like, I don't remember the story specifically, but that is a story about a sex worker. And Yeah. And I do have a website. It's my last name, so LEUNG art.com. Here, I'll type it in.
Santex/Jonathan, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Sweet. Would you like to? So you've given us this beautiful poem about your cultural experience as an immigrant.
Well, I myself, I myself am not an immigrant. I was actually born and raised here in the Bay Area.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
But I am the child of former refugees from El Salvador, and that has informed a lot of the things that I grew up with. First of all, before I go into it, I'd like to acknowledge that I am currently talking to you all from unceded Ramaytush land. And I also wanted to start this off by saying Happy May Day, also known as International Workers' Day, and to especially keep Black, Indigenous, and POC workers, queer, trans, and intersex workers, workers with disabilities, and undocumented workers in your thoughts. Okay, so this piece is titled Kushkatan. You stand on the shoulders of deities, crafted from maize, sprouted from volcanic ash, creator and destroyer, reborn in the resplendent feathers of the toros. You are born from death and displacement, wailing cries of mothers searching for their children. You strike with the gun, or is it the pen? Liberation delivered through mass, disobeying man's God. You are your ancestors, past, present, future, unmovable yet fluid, holding the universe, divine, dual, masculine, feminine. You exist, and for that you must yell. Yell at the top of your lungs till you're out of breath, till your voice runs out, until they can no longer ignore you. You are here and you will remain. Yeah, this poem was actually written a couple of years ago during a workshop at San Francisco State through the Richard Oakes Multicultural Center while I was a student there. And I literally just wrote the poem down in a notebook, read it aloud once in a non-edited form, closed that notebook, put it away, never saw it again until recently. And the reason why I decided to revisit this poem was because while I was doing a deep cleaning of my apartment, I actually managed to find the notebook again. And it just seemed like it was fate at the moment because very recently my great-grandmother had passed away. She was born December 2nd, 1914, and she passed away this year, 2020. And my great-grandmother for sure has been a figure in my life and in the life of many other people that really sticks out. I mean, how many other people do you know that were born in 1914? My great-grandmother was born in El Salvador during a time where there were no paved roads. Most of the country did not have access to electricity. She lived through the 1932 indigenous and peasant uprising, which then resulted in the dictator at the time, Maximiliano Hernandez, to send the military to kill over 30,000 people in the span of 3 days, most of them being indigenous people. She lived through the Salvadoran Civil War, which lasted from 1980 to 1992, and she lived to see 4 generations after her. And so my great-grandmother for sure has been influential, to say the least, in my life, the way that she managed to survive, resist, and live her own life. And in her honor, I would like to actually spend the rest of my time by plugging in a call from workers on the ground in El Salvador. So this is through CSPIS, which is the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. I will link their website with more information in the chat box. But currently, workers in El Salvador under the fascist regime of the current president, Nayib Bukele, have come out with a list of 9 demands. The demands are: 1, stop the layoffs and respect rights of workers, including public sector workers at all levels of government. 2, respect union freedom and collective agreement of public sector workers. 3, promote micro and small businesses. 4, fund the healthcare and education and rescue the primary and community healthcare programs that focus on preventative health through taxes on the wealthy. 5, defense of water and no to privatization. 6, approval of the Ley de Soberanía Alimentaria and reform of the Ley de Pesticidas to prohibit the use of agrotoxics. 7, no tax evasion by transnational corporations. 8, no to unmanageable debt owed to international financial institutions by impoverished countries. 9, we call on the executive government to respect press freedom and right to free expression, respect institutionality and separation of powers, and democratic process born through the peace accord. And yeah, that is all I currently have to share right now. So if anyone has any questions or any comments, feel free to go ahead and share them.
A line that really spoke to me was, "You strike with the gun, or is it the pen?" I was just wondering if you could expand more on that. I'm sure you have stories about that, and I would love to hear them.
Yeah, so it's a bit of historical context. During the 1980s, mostly under the Reagan administration of the US, the US propagated proxy wars in Central America. They supported the military governments of El Salvador and Guatemala at the time. They supported the Contras in Nicaragua, and they supported the military dictatorship of Honduras to train forces that they would later on send to these 3 countries. And at the time, various revolutionaries, you know, a lot of these people, working class, peasants, indigenous folks, they would take up arms. But not only would they take up arms, there was this documentary on the Sandinistas in Nicaragua leading up to the overthrow of the dictator at the time, Anastasio Somoza. They actually implemented amongst themselves like poetry writing workshops while they were hiding out in the mountains and the jungles. And so there were multiple ways that these revolutionaries would strike. They wouldn't just strike with guns, they also struck with pens through the work that they ended up writing. And poetry for sure is very influential in the revolutionary spirit of Central America. If you look at the history of Central American uprising, Central American resistance, there's a lot of prominent figures within poetry and literature. And so I wanted to basically pay homage to that.
What is a torogos? Is it a mythical creature or an actual animal? Or what is it?
The torogos is an actual bird. I keep forgetting the name of it in English, but in El Salvador, it's known as the torogos. It is the national bird of the country. And it also happens to be the national bird of Nicaragua, but it goes under a different name in Nicaragua. They call it guardabarranco. And so the torogos has significance not only as a national symbol because it is the national bird of El Salvador, but also it features very symbolically in other ways. Like there is this saying that you cannot keep a torogos in captivity because they will try until its death to escape. And that was also a bit in reference to the current situation at the US-Mexico border with people being in concentration camps, and how this has led to the death of many folks, including indigenous children, trans women, many of them coming from Central America. And I feel like it really speaks to the soul that Central Americans have in the way that they resist. You know, a bird being represented by a bird that you cannot even hold in captivity. It would prefer death over that.
Can I say something? I just want to say thank you for your voice and for sharing. I think I'm a lot older than a lot of you here. I remember writing a paper in high school about what was happening in Central America in the 80s. And all I can say is it's folks like you with the ability to articulate yourself that we need in office. So just please keep using your voice. You got a strong voice.
I'd also like to say thank you. And I'm curious, Jonathan, are you a student at CCSF, or what's your connection to? I just want to hear more of your work. So
I've got a couple of friends who go to CCSF, and I was planning on enrolling late this semester. However, through the whole COVID-19 thing, that just didn't happen. So we'll see when I end up enrolling in classes.
yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a website or maybe an Instagram you could share? I'm sure it's on the gallery side actually, but.
Yeah, I don't have my own website. However, I am active on Twitter and Instagram. I have the same username there that I came up with, I think, around the time where I freshly graduated high school. It's at Pupusazadi. I will send it right now through the chat box.
Sorry, Jonathan. I just wanna, this is Vic speaking. I can't, like, the contrast between this work and the depth of it and your Twitter and Instagram. But no, there's lots of love. Like, it's great. So, yes, I just wanted to point out the contrast. I mean, if anything, it says that, you know, distinctly, I'm so, like, I'm so touched by your work. And the exact opposite is happening with your Twitter account. But yes.
Jonathan, I noticed that there's, like, from what I understood with the craft from maize and sprouted from volcanic ash, there's a lot of like allusion to Popol Vuh. Was that something that you did, like, intentionally, or an inspiration behind that?
Thank you for that question. Yes, it was actually. So the title of the poem and the very first couple of lines are for sure influenced by indigenous cosmology within the region. So the Popol Vuh is a great example. The Popol Vuh comes from the Maya Quiche people, who are from what is now considered modern-day Guatemala, but various other indigenous peoples within the region share the same or similar cosmologies. And basically, it is that people are made out of maize, people are made out of corn, because it is such a staple of people's diets out there, especially if they're workers or if they're peasants. And the word Kushkatan is actually not Nahuatl, which means place of jewel necklaces. And Nahuatl is spoken by one of the indigenous peoples of El Salvador, the Pipil, who were most notably present in the western side of the country, which is where most of my family is. And I really wanted to pay honor to indigenous peoples, because without it, it's indigenous peoples that are always in the forefront when it comes to issues of land and water and sustainability. And without those things, we don't really have anything.
Kitty, are you here?
Hi, sorry, I was like eating hot chips. um, yeah, how do I start this thing? Introductions?
Whatever makes you feel awesome. If you just want to start reciting, that's cool. If you want to tell us like what inspired feminism is red.
All right, cool. I like
strong title.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Kitty, and I am, how am I here? I'm here in this space as a member of Anak Bayan, which is my organization, my collective, that actually inspired me to write this poem. So yeah, I really want to give them a shout out because this wouldn't have happened for them because yeah, actually before I like jump into that, let me say what they are. So Anak Bayan translates in Filipino to Youth of the People. And we're a national democratic organization of youth and students, Filipino and non-Filipinos, fighting for true democracy and liberation in the Philippines. Yeah, so the reason why I'm giving them a shout out is because they are the first political home I had that like stressed like the importance of like, hey, if this information isn't accessible to you, it's not your fault. Because I've like struggled all my life with like reading and understanding political theory. So yeah, coming to this organization, I've been able to wrap my head around political theory, and they showed me how like everything is political, and yeah, politics matters. So yeah, by being able to understand like politics, I've been able to yeah, question the social systems we live in. I'm like reading notes just in case I like forgot stuff. I'm so nervous.
This is a very
yeah.
non-judging space.
Oh, okay, for sure. Yeah, so I've been able to question the social systems we live in by thinking about how these things like impact me like on a personal level, and not even just like on a personal level, but taking it to a whole nother level and thinking about how it impacts like my community, and just literally thinking about these social issues radically and just like getting into like the root causes of why these social issues have manifested. Yeah, and just like rather than thinking about these problems individually and thinking about like, well, how else do these issues impact people in my community, like everyone else who's suffering under like this unjust system like capitalism. Like every single person is being exploited, we're all being robbed of our livelihoods, and like also just like to the point of like sometimes not even having humanity for one another. But yeah, so I'm still learning about feminism. Like this is like really new to me. I've always been a slow learner all my life. So thank you for inviting me. So like right now, what I understand feminism is, I guess in some would be, it would like take on the framework of feminists from like the global South. And also always putting marginalized people who are marginalized by like our system at the forefront of every campaign or social movement you wage, because those people's voices are the most important. The working class are the most important as well. Indigenous people are really important. Yeah, I'm like looking to see if I missed anything. But another thing is like, I used to think like as a kid, like how like this world didn't really feel like it was for me. And I think just like encountering my collective, I've been able to really articulate this after I've met like a comrade who said they shared similar feelings of like, yeah, it feels like this world isn't for me. And it makes sense because we live in a system that like makes it so, that makes it that way, that we like experience like injustices and inequalities. So like, I feel like I'm ranting. Sorry.
There is nothing wrong with ranting.
Sure.
You are at a point where you are trying to get better, and there are lots of people in the world that don't have that foresight. So even if your learning is slow, you're still learning. And that's a wonderful thing.
Oh, thanks. We're all learning. But yeah, just to like wrap this up, to come full circle so it doesn't potentially turn into a rant, because we have time.
We can edit that if it bothers you.
No, it's fine. But yeah, I just want to wrap it up and like get to the poem, because yeah, I want to share the poem.
Your poem's amazing.
Thanks. But yeah, so in sum, with the help of my collective, the support and guidance of my comrades, they've helped me challenge the systems in place that have made me feel alienated by asking such questions. Yeah. So, okay, without further ado, let's get into the poem. So, feminism is red. To live feminisms means to challenge the confines of boxes and categories, cross bridges, bleed into borders, breach class lines, confront gender roles. It is to link with those who are more equal to ensure that together we are listening to those who are least supported. Feminism is to practice drawing your life into questions, gradually drawing them in ways that will lead to actionable plans. Further sharpening these questions with the toiling masses in mind to collate the needs and concerns they voice into the revolutionary attitudes. These questions will tear down ubiquitous ideological prisons within us. We will strive to endlessly liberate our minds. It is a never-ending fight because once the battle is won, we must work to abolish liberalism's ghosts. Practice makes practice. We must unite our imaginations with art, literature, literature, fashion, cultural lexicons, zines, memes, and non-hierarchical regimes as one component part of the revolutionary machine. It will serve to unite and educate the people, to attack and obliterate the enemy with his ghosts. Together, this will help us fight the enemy with one heart and one mind. Together, we will manifest our vision into existence. To be a true feminist, one must always put Black trans women, Black women, Indigenous women, women of color, and all oppressed people at the forefront of the revolution. It is the most oppressed masses that will lead us to victory. Our liberation is bound to you, me, and them. No one is truly free until we all are. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
So why is feminism red?
So why is feminism red? Because I feel like in order for feminism, like we are thinking about ways women can be liberated, and I think the only way for women to be truly liberated is with communist thought, like thinking of like putting the workers at the forefront of changing social systems, and that thought so happens to be red.
That part of the poem, to me, I looked at it as, because I'm Indigenous, Native American, and we wear red because the spirits can only see in red. So that's why we wear red when we march, and we create, we put the red handprints in our mouths, and we put red sand in the cracks to symbolize that no more women fall through the cracks of society. So that's what red meant to me when I read that in the poem. So it was interesting hearing your perspective as well. So thank you.
What was your name? Who had said that?
Tashina.
Sheena? Thank you so much.
Tashina. Yeah.
Tashina. Thank you. Wow, that's really beautiful. I like when things like that come full circle, like the symbols. That's really powerful. Because Indigenous people are important to the movement. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, like, the reason why I put that there too is because it's hard to imagine, like, changing the world without these things I listed. I know, like, personally, before I started studying socialism and communism, I was like, oh, what does that even look like? What does that mean? Like, I know the words and stuff, but like the art, like seeing artwork, like what does a new world really look like is really helpful, motivating.
Seems that people are a little shy now because we actually have a few comments in the chat for you, Kitty.
Oh, hey.
Henri and Shuri. are sending you snaps.
Oh, thanks.
Jonathan,
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing. One of the collectives that I was a part of at San Francisco State was the League of Filipino Students. And I participated in the annual Anak Bayan exposure trip last semester.
Oh.
And just wanted to share that, you know, we each learn at our own pace, but in reality, like, you know, most people who are dedicated to the movement know it within their hearts, know it within their souls. And reading your poem, I know that you have it within your heart, you have it within your soul, you know, because the movement is basically from the masses for the masses. And that's exactly what I got through your words. So just wanted to say thank you.
Jonathan, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you.
Nothing wrong with crying.
You're right, there isn't. It'd just be hard to speak.
I thought it was really significant that you opened up the poem with cross bridges, bleed into borders, breach class lines. I think those are words that to like the dominant culture will seem neutral, like bridge, border, line, but to like, you know, queer, trans, people of color, they are not like neutral terms at all. They're very charged, they're very polarizing, very political. I thought it was really interesting that you kind of grouped them together. And I liked how you started off with that. I also liked how your poem had exclamation marks. I know like as an English reader, we don't really interact with exclamation marks that much. But I know like in national anthems of other countries and union songs, there are a lot of exclamation marks. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just like the spirit of like the communist like line you're a part of. I don't know, I think it's really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for pointing out those things. Yeah, so I didn't even realize, to be honest, I did those exclamation marks. Don't know. Yeah, I forgot. I wanted to respond to what you said about the first line with the bridges and the borders. I thought it would come to me, but it's not. I'm so sorry. But thanks, Catherine.
Hey, Kitty, this is Leda. My camera's not working, but I just hearing you talk and hearing you read that, I have a lump in my throat. I put billboards up around LA that said, "None of us are well until we're all well" last year. And I don't know, just hearing you talk, you sound, again, I feel like I'm older than all of you. I'm not sure, but it seems like it. And I feel so like, I just want to tell you guys, like, your instincts are so right. I mean, and I'm so like, want to encourage you all to fight really hard. I mean, I'm devastated at where we are today. I feel like I grew up with like relatively aware parents who were feminist and taught me all about socialism and communism when I was a little girl. And I had all the privileges in the world, and I still feel so powerless. And especially right now, and the way things are, just hearing you guys talk, I'm so inspired and just want to encourage you to keep going.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Leda.
This is Vic. I think I feel very, I've definitely worked closely with a lot of Anak Bayan members, and I do strongly, the work that y'all do is incredible. I do think like for me, being like a child of refugees from Vietnam, it's always it's very difficult for me to see communism, you know, with this sort of sympathy, with this sort of admiration when it's caused so much trauma and violence in my family. And I do believe that, you know, in that context, it was perverted. Like there, you know, we haven't really had a true communist nation society. But I just wanted to add that in there. Like, I agree with everything in here. But I often, to me, like, red is such a violent, I guess, like, for me, the imagery of communism has always been so violent. But you know, the body of your poem, it does ring true. So yeah.
No, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Vic. And for context also, yeah, I'm also a child of like a refugee parent. We came from Laos for similar reasons as well. So I was also really like apprehensive in like getting into communism for that reason too, because my family had dealt with the trauma and hadn't had like time to heal. So then, you know, even thinking about communism, it's like, oh, how am I even gonna, you know, think about that, like knowing like what like my mom has gone through. So I totally get that. It's taken a lot of like learning and unpacking and figuring this out, but I'm not sure if this is the space. Yeah, if this is the space for what I found out when I was like doing more research of like the sub-Mekong region. Would this be the space for that, Andy?
It's totally the space for that. That's why we're intersectional, so everything counts.
Okay, for sure. So like in my like research, because I was like, yeah, what happened in like Laos? Like communism, like in everywhere else, like how come it worked out? But then in like Laos and Vietnam, like what was wrong? Why was it violent? And I found that it was actually, things were going well until like somebody would come in and actually hijack like the movement. And it would usually be someone who had a lot of money or was like well off or affluent. Which goes back to like in my poem that I like emphasize how important it is for like the people who are the most oppressed and like the working class to be leading the revolution, and like not these like rich and affluent people, because they don't understand, like they don't understand the struggle, and like these other people who are coming in, they're just assuming like what these people need, sort of like the savior complex. And then like later on, it just like these people who come in just like take advantage of like the momentum of the movement, and then before you know, it's just like, oh, there's just like this group of people who are suddenly like making all these executive decisions. And it's just like that at that point, then that's when it's not communism anymore. They're just using communism as like a facade or like a disguise, like they're just tainting the name. And yeah, it's the thing that makes me really angry, because I was like, wow, like these people just came in and swooped this people's movement, and it's supposed to be like for us, for the people, the farmers, the peasants, the people like doing all the backbreaking work in the fields in Vietnam and Laos and the Philippines. Yeah, I don't know if that like, yeah, if that answers like I wasn't answering a question, but I think I was just like explaining like, yeah, my experience with like communism as like also a kid of like a refugee parent. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much, Kitty. It's Leda again. I don't know why my camera's not working, but I just wanted to add to that in addition to, you know, needing to keep the power in the hands of the most marginalized, I read this amazing article, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, that says power causes brain damage. And it was in the Atlantic a few years ago. And they did a bunch of studies on people's brains as they gained power, and they became less empathetic the more power they got. So when we do win, when the movement wins, we need to remember that. And as we gain power, we need to have like somebody on our side saying, hey, don't forget, you're getting powerful, so you might forget how to empathize. Just as a, yeah.
Thanks, Leda. Yeah, and that's another thing like I learned from Anak Bayan, which is why they emphasize like why it's so important to place like democracy above all, to like get like a unity from like all the people before moving forward with the decision. Otherwise, that's like how it happens. Like power is just like monopolized by like one person or like one group of people.
Hi, I don't know if there's, I'm just gonna talk, I guess. I don't know if there's more time, but yeah, I just want to say that I'm really proud of you, Nika, and you know, like you can really see like your dedication to the movement here and like how much you've studied, like how even like you alluded to revisionism in this poem to you know, basically movements being hijacked and moving away from the political line with right where is it, I know you talk about like liberalism. It is a never-ending fight because once the battle is won, we must work to abolish liberalism's ghost. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because like since that's like such a like the meat of the discussion, it seems like here, and that like you even alluded to it there, and also just like wanted to ask you to like expand more on like what liberalism means.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Shanika. That's my comrade. Okay. See, tears makes it hard to talk. Okay, so liberalism, it's an ideology that was founded like way back in the day in the 1700s by these people in Europe, these white men in Europe who it was during the Enlightenment period. And basically what this ideology holds is like 4 pillars, and one is like private property, freedom, which is, I'm doing quotation marks because freedom can be really ambiguous. Freedom, what's the other thing I'm thinking of? I'm just like overwhelmed with feelings right now. I said private property, individualism, and I'm missing another one right now. But yeah, anyways, all these like just in sum, like these pillars, these virtues, what they do is like they wow, I'm drawing a blank. Let me just slow down my thoughts right now. But basically what it is, it's just like it underpins capitalism. So like the need to gain property for oneself, and then even just saying oneself, that makes them like really like individualist. Like I just need this house in the hills far away from people just for myself, and then there's like a disconnect from the people. And then now at this point, like with like the idea of like liberalism, this person who's living off in the hills will just like continue hoarding all the wealth for themselves until like there's no capital or like product or goods or services like left for, just product or wealth like left for like the rest of the people. So an example would be like, oh, like Jeff Bezos sitting on his mansion wherever that is because he's hoarded all the wealth, and just like bring it back to those ideas. Does that make sense what I said?
Hey, Kitty, that definitely makes sense. And I think your poem and everything you're sharing right now is so relevant to what we're experiencing, and just is a reminder that feminism isn't just for female identified people. It's really to help everybody. I know you were just talking about liberalism as a concept that underpins everything, but the word liberate, I mean, like it really helps liberate everybody. So I really appreciate you sharing this poem and sharing everything you just shared about communism. That's been opening my mind, and I don't know, I feel overwhelmed and like I'm gonna cry too. So I'm just really happy to be in this space and hearing all of your stories and ideas. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Tracy. I appreciate the feedback.
One more thing to share. I'm not sure if you've done this educational development yet with Anakba in San Diego, but I remember leading up to the trip to the Philippines, having to do the 5 golden rays, and how that has been a pillar in my life ever since then, and how that is also like very very important to like lead to like these perversions of what people think that communism or socialism are, because the 5 golden rays are basically like the concept of criticisms and self-criticisms. And you know, it's something that's very grounding. Yeah, in case anyone has any other like questions regarding that subject. But thank you once again for sharing.
Yeah, for sure, Jonathan. It's like my favorite book for someone who like struggles with reading. Like, wow, it's so thin. So this is actually online. You could just Google it and it's right up there. And it's like really easy to like read, like the way they post it. Like you'll see, oh, what is liberalism? They'll put it line by line. And then like, how do we combat it? So highly recommend it. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Katie, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I realized after I submitted and then I was looking at everybody else's, everyone has a much deeper, I think, interpretation of feminism. And the one that I have in front of you is more, I guess, on the entertainment side. So I teach at City College. I teach Asian American Studies, specifically within film and then history portion of it. And you can really see it's really small. And I'm kind of see it as well. I drew, but so I have 6 pieces, basically. They are of different women who have impacted Asian American film and TV as well. So I realized, so I'm just gonna repeat it very briefly. I realized that everyone else was talking about a much deeper version of feminism, and I took a little bit of more on the entertainment side. So I teach at City College. I teach in Asian American Studies. I also teach within the history and of that department. And so I have 6 pictures of different women who have impacted Asian American film and also TV. And the fact that there are so many women who have impacted the industry and it's making it hard to just narrow it down to 6 people is a fantastic problem to have. For the most part, you know, a lot of other people do not have this ability to name 6 people who have impacted the entertainment industry. So I think it's such a blessing. And also right now, I mean, if you hear laughter in the background, it's because my sister is watching Never Have I Ever by Mindy Kaling. She thinks it's amazing. And I watched it, and this is the second time, you know, they're watching it, and I've cried through all 10 episodes. And then also Alice Wu's The Half of It just came out on Netflix today. So that is something I will be streaming very, very soon. But as you can see in the picture, I've included Anna May Wong, who is more or less known as one of the pioneers for Asian American representation on screen. It's, I guess, next year will be the 60th anniversary of her passing, but she is now only being recognized within the industry as being pretty much a firecracker. And then I also have Nancy, Never Have I Ever is the show that I cried through. Very, very good show. And then the second one is Nancy Kwan. She is most known for films like Flower Drum Song, as well as The World of Susie Wong. Those are kind of films that we see, at least in Asian American Studies, as marks, but also ones of depicting a lot of stereotypes and sort of perpetuating this idea of Asian woman being seductive, and then also very submissive. And then I have, of course, Leah Salonga, who everyone knows as Jasmine, Mulan, and sort of a lot of other Broadway plays and stars. And then I also put in characters. So I put in Lane Kim from Gilmore Girls, Claudia Kishi within the Babysitters Club, and Margaret Cho. I put her kind of as a character and I guess a celebrity as well, in terms of how she presents herself, both as a comic and then as just a person as well. And so I think the main take I was going with this is that feminism within a Hollywood context oftentimes looks very, very shallow. Depending on what people say within the interviews, can oftentimes be misinterpreted, but they also can seem very surface-based, no matter how deep they go into a particular subject. And so I guess it's almost this idea of dissecting the definition and how to be a feminist within a Hollywood context then comes into question. And we do see oftentimes white women taking that lead as being feminist within the industry. However, a woman of color in entertainment don't have that luxury of doing so, or of sometimes being as picky in terms of their choices for film, TV, and sort of how the way that they're portrayed. And so, at least as an Asian American woman, which by the way, it's API month for May, so happy API month. Just this idea that, for people who are just viewing it and people who enjoy the medium, it's reassuring to see people just be authentic on screen, and then hopefully that they can portray their authentic self when they're also off screen as well. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Vic. As someone who identifies as an Asian American woman, yeah, I always get really excited when I see an illustration of someone who's Asian. I know that seems so, it's so odd because I don't think I realized how often we're missing in pieces. I never see portraits of us. We're never in museums. And so I do remember a specific moment. I was with a friend and we saw a specific painting with and there was very typical Chinese objects. It was a painting of a living room and there was a calendar and all those things, and I got really excited about it. Shout out to Fiona who actually came in. Yeah, that was with her. But yeah, I lit up when I saw your piece. I was instantly excited. So thank you for submitting it.
And thank you for sharing your story. I can understand the excitement. It's not very oftentimes we even see someone with black hair come onto screen unless they've dyed it in some way or another. So I completely can understand that feeling. So this Asian American Life is Instagram and really a collective that I run. Right now, my hope is to really create a cultural hub for people who want to be able to express themselves in a creative and supportive, empowering manner. And so I started the collective. Currently, we're in the very beginning steps of trying to figure out what it will look like. I've been reaching out to artists and people who enjoy expressing themselves in different ways all over the country. But in the meantime, we're kind of stuck on an Instagram platform, and hopefully we'll be putting ourselves onto Facebook as a Facebook group, almost as I guess an extension of Instagram as well. And so for me, I do comics. My comics called Generation, and the hope is that I'm able to present Asian American studies in a very palatable form for people. And comics is a medium that is oftentimes underutilized, and it is able to bring a message across in a very distinct way. And so if you're interested, I'll put the Instagram on the chat as well. So if you feel like you guys see an Asian face, or being able to be exposed to many new artists who are doing something very similar. I'd love to have you on that journey.
Hi, I'm here. So I just wanted to point out first that I wanted this piece to be really diverse. So in the way that the arms could either be male or female arms, because what feminism means to me is equality for men and women. So yeah, so that's what I just wanted to start there. So I think that this entire piece was kind of inspired by my own tattoo that I have. My first tattoo I got when I was about 15, 16, and it was a rose, and I did it without my parents knowing. It was a really dark time for me, and I was doing whatever I could to feel in control of my body and kind of regain that strength in myself. And I don't know, I guess like to sort of feel something and to do something a little crazy and out of my comfort zone. So I had gotten a rose tattoo, and I thought that I couldn't go wrong and I couldn't regret a rose, because roses are like the most purest forms of nature, and they're so beautiful. And you know, people give flowers as thank yous, people give flowers as anniversary gifts, get well, like I just couldn't see anything going wrong with that. So that's why I got the rose. And so since then, flowers have been super meaningful to me and super meaningful as to who I am as a person. So yeah, with that, my parents soon found out, and my dad was very mad at me that I had gotten a tattoo without their permission, and my dad hates tattoos and didn't talk to me for about 6 months. So my dad was really against everything that I believed in. I grew up, my dad's side of the family is Filipino, and on their side of the family, it's very taboo to just talk about your feelings. Tattoos are a big no-no, just specifically in our family. So I was really distant from them, and there was a few things that happened with that family that I wanted to distance myself from. So from this, I grew stronger from it as my dad stopped talking to me over a tattoo. I felt like I kind of connected it to back in history, how women would cut their hair just because men liked how long their hair was. So I kind of put flowers all over this male or woman's body to kind of say, like, screw you, flowers are beautiful, and I'm gonna do what makes me feel beautiful and what makes me happy and what makes me feel alive and what makes me feel connected to my body. So that's the idea that is in this piece. But overall, I just want this piece to kind of represent whatever that meaning is closest to them. I kind of asked a few friends what they thought that it meant, and it was really interesting to see the different perspectives. And some people thought that, you know, the person was facing one direction or the other direction. So just kind of take that into account when you're looking at it. Is the flowers or what represents to me and what I want in anyone else's aspect of life, and being their own person, and standing up for what is right, you know, and kind of like an unapologetic meaning to the anatomy of someone. So any questions?
Hi Kaylee, this is Vic. Actually, you know, when I first saw their piece, I imagined that it was something like as if this individual's body, this was like the basin to grow all these flowers, like they were, you know, what nurtured you know, the earth and something. I think, like, for me, the concept of, like, my family definitely compares this concept of virginity and purity to being a flower, like how once you cut it, you can't, it only wilts from there on, kind of thing. And I do like how, like, you're changing the image. And it also reminds me of, like, someone from art history remind me. Starts with B. It's like when like there's a period of time when images would like sort of they loved painting like inanimate objects during this period of time, and it's always like peeking from the darkness. Is anyone ringing any bells? It's like or not? Okay, but yeah, I think it reminds me of that. So it's, and I love that era. I just can't remember it right now.
Is it the Renaissance era?
No, it's after. It was like when they revitalized the Renaissance, but they definitely but it was always like it was always like a really dark image and something like emerging from it. Like it was always an interesting play on light. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that you can see it from your own perspective too, because that's kind of what I wanted in that piece.
So I just wanted to say, so I come from a very religious background myself. My parents are Mormons, and the whole doctrine there is your body is a temple. And since, you know, my adult life and moving very far away from that and getting my own tattoos, I like the temple metaphor. My body is a temple, especially now and in San Francisco, where largely nature is viewed as, you know, the source of wonder and beauty and life, and our bodies are temples to nature and flowers and just the interaction of the body and the organic and sort of blooming. I just thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that the temple representative of a body is so beautiful, and I think that it shouldn't be taken lightly either. But I kind of wanted to use my temple as like a grow through what you go through kind of thing. And I think that really says a lot. So thank you.
What would a temple be without decoration, right?
Right.
I'll go with the superficial question. How many more tattoos do you have?
I only have one since then, because recently I had moved out and I was like, I'm gonna get all kinds of tattoos, and then I was like, you know what, maybe I should think about it a little bit more before I do so. But I've been thinking about my next two is tattoo. Since I moved to San Francisco, I'm gonna get my apartment number.
Cool. It's a very hopeful image.
Yeah.
Very growth oriented. I really love it.
Thank you.
I really like your art. I'm a middle school art teacher, and I see a lot of flowers too. I really relate to your tattoo story. I too have a story where like I got a secret tattoo. My dad like held it over me while he was on his deathbed. Like that's the shit religious parents do. And I feel like that's kind of a shared memory, like a shared experience that a lot of girls have. It's not just you and me. It's like so many girls have a story like that, which is really traumatizing for all of us. I just really encourage you to like keep working with this theme, because it'll like reach more people, reach more girls who have this story, who it'll speak to. And I don't know, I love it.
Thank you so much.
Have you created more works about that experience?
I've created most. I believe I was really drawn to your piece just because I'm really interested in figures and painting and body images to kind of correlate that idea of what happened, but I don't think any other pieces kind of came out as good as this one, and I was super proud of this one because I either drew female figures or like flowers in nature, so combining them together was something that I've never done before. So it kind of just exploded on the page and it came out better than I thought it would.
Jess is offering to take you to the floor through the floristry department.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm wondering if there's significance in the flowers you chose. Are they, yeah.
Yeah, so the title of it was Rose Garden, which was more symbolic of the tattoo itself. But as pictured, there's only like 2 or 3 roses in there. And I wanted it to be more, I guess, like diversity and more than just roses, because there's all different types pictured there. And most of those I feel like aren't usually put together often, like some of the tulip-like ones and roses and stuff like that, like aren't usually put together. So I wanted to feel like that was a different meaning for also the diversity, and that could be a man or a woman, and that could, the different flowers represent varied nature and quality of that.
We have a triptych by Tashina. Are you still here?
Yes,
I do
I'm
have
here.
a triptych on identity, but I know that they are individual pieces.
Yes, they are. Okay, so can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So the first piece I'll talk about is, I guess the one in the center. That's my newest piece. Yeah, it's a long canvas. And I made this piece to capture that feeling that I had when I participated in the Women's March last year. I marched with my sisters from, my Indigenous sisters, and we all wore our red ribbon skirts and our red ribbon dresses and made our banners and our poster boards, and we marched together. And I just remember marching and the feeling that I got to be among all these women just marching, and these fathers wearing red, holding their children on their shoulders, inspired me. And I wanted to capture that moment, like more than what like a photograph would do. I wanted to be able to capture just the unity
emotion
of it, and that's what I did. And I felt like this is what I wanted. The black, the red, the yellow, the white, the panels, they symbolize the 4 directions, which is an indigenous thing. So it represents north, south, east, and west. It's also on the medicine wheel. Those are the colors. And the red dresses represent the missing, murdered Indigenous women. Each dress represents a woman that we've lost, a sister that we've lost. One of the pictures I put in there is a girl named Selena who was missing or murdered, and and then last year I also lost a sister of my own, and it was really hard. Ava was a part of that with me. She really showed support, and we created a like a platform, and created like a what do you call it, an altar, and and we burned sage, and we did a lot with holding her in our memories and honoring her spirit. And yeah, it just inspired me to really just do something to add awareness to that cause. So this piece actually means a lot to me. I titled it Front Lines because it represented all of us being together in unity and solidarity on the front lines together. And each person on there is actually someone in my community. And when I made these people out of the paper, I sent it to them through Messenger, and I was like, and they were all really happy that I made it of them, and everyone recognized each other from who they saw on the march. And I asked them, is it okay if I use this and make a bigger piece with it? And they all said yes. So it was just amazing to be able to bring them all together and just to recreate that feeling that I had when I marched with them. I'm in the front in the jeans with the short hair, and yeah, and then my sister, I put her in there as well. But yeah, so that's that piece. The other piece I can talk about is the one off to the right. It's titled We Bleed. This one I created it last year for a final in one of my women and gender studies classes. and I had to write this 10-page research paper on menstruation. And I really wanted to dismantle that taboo and the patriarchy around women, and the fact that, hey, okay, you can look these, but you don't want to talk about what our bodies do. And I really wanted to show that we bleed, so that's why with this famous statue, I sat at the table and I drew it on gray paper with a white pencil, and then I added in some charcoal pencil. And then at the end, I wanted to put blood in there. And so I got my red marker and did blood. And then I wanted more. So then I did the cut paper technique that I love, and created these red waves. And I just love the reactions I get from this piece. On my social media, I posted it before I added the blood, and everyone was like, wow, amazing, awesome. And then I posted it with the blood, and silence. Because it's just a taboo bit. And
It's awful. I think the red's really important.
but it's okay. I understand. I have a daughter who's 13, and I think with her, walking through this with her was just amazing. She helped me. Like I said, should I add more blood? And she's like, yeah, Mom, add more blood. And it was just, it had a lot to do. She had a lot to do with this. Like, I wanted her to be comfortable menstruating in ways that I wasn't growing up. I wanted her to feel like she's not dirty, that she's not gross, that she's beautiful. And when she's menstruating, she's powerful, because she's right there with, creating her own ceremony. That's what we call it in our culture, is you're having your own ceremony. And and then I did some research on the Navajo culture, which my son's from, actually, and they do a menstruation coming of age ceremony, which lasts like 4 days. And it's just so beautiful. Like, they really honor this woman during this liminal period where she's growing, transitioning and growing from being a child to a woman, and how she's blossoming, and how she needs that nurturing from a mentor, from an older, like an auntie or a mother. And these are things that I didn't have growing up. I didn't have that mother or that anyone to really tell me about it. Someone mentioned church earlier, and yeah, I started my period in church for the first time, and I didn't know what the hell was going on with my body. All I knew was what I read from Teen Vogue and what I watched off of MTV, which wasn't very, it wasn't nice. It wasn't nice at all. And I didn't want my daughter to learn about her body through MTV or through a friend trying to slide a tampon under the bathroom door and telling her how to put it, where to put it, what to do. Because that was my experience. My mother, her experience was, she told her mom that she started, and her mother threw a box of tampons at her and told her, read the box, and but even though she went through that and she knew how it made her feel, she didn't do differently with me. Instead, she avoided it completely. And I wanted to do different for my daughter. And so with other women in the community, we got together and we started talking about our daughters and how they're at that age, and, how can we prepare them in ways that we weren't prepared. So what we did was we created these period boxes, and we put in like teen pads and tampons, and I put in chocolate bars and face cream and lotions and body spray and face mask and lip gloss, and just all these little things to just make her feel good about this transition. And I told her when she started, I would give her that box, and I did. And I noticed the way that she's more confident than I was at her age, and so this piece means a lot to me. It's dear to my heart, and yeah, okay. I could go on and on with that, but
I'm
the
gonna
other
cry.
piece took me, I know, sorry. The other
No,
piece
it's
is
just
okay.
go ahead. I'm
The other
sorry.
piece is my self-portrait. This is actually a really large piece, and it took me like 4 years to actually finish. It started as a extra credit assignment in one of the art classes that I took at CCSF. And I didn't have enough time to complete it, but I really made it my goal to finish it. But I wanted to take my time and slowly add in like a small piece at a time. There's pieces on there, the triangle square. I don't know if you guys could see it. Sorry. It has the triangles with the circles that symbolizes my recovery, because I have 11 years clean and sober, and that's been a big part of where I'm at today, or why I'm where I'm at, and that's, yeah. Then I have also the missing murdered Indigenous women up there too, to honor that. And also I put down, there's an area I put brown is beautiful. I put a Wonder Woman in there with the gender sign, because I'm a feminist, and I feel empowered by being a feminist, and I've never had that before. I put in my education, because I'm grateful that I have it. I feel like I got a late start, but you know what? I'm grateful that I did it, because without my education, I wouldn't be where I'm at. That's for sure. And I wouldn't be the mother that I am today. I would still be that woman who couldn't even talk about my body to be able to help my child. Also, I have the military symbol on the bottom, because my oldest, he's 19 now, and he's in the military. And I should be more proud, but I'm not, and that's hard to say. And I have some mixed feelings around the military, especially me being a feminist. But, I don't want my son to lose who he is because of some sexist society that tells him these things. Some of the things he told me that they were doing during training just broke my heart. Yeah. It's all the stuff that I've been trying to undo, through all my giving back to the community, all my acts, all my art, my writings. Yeah. So, and then my self-portrait also has, let me see. And then my 4 babies. I'm a mother of 4, so I got my 4 babies in there. Yeah, I got a lot of different things. It's such a big piece. Like, it's easier to like zoom in on a little one, but I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, any questions for anything? I kind of gave a lot of information. Feel free to ask or comment. Thank you.
So I have a comment. I was just thinking like how you refer to like with these pieces you make it for someone else. And I think it's really important that pieces like this that you're creating exist. It shows the struggle, but then also it shows like, yeah, like for example, the piece in the middle that you have with the march, you said, I remember you said, I wanted to capture this moment. And if you didn't capture this moment, then like it wouldn't manifest for like the next generation or your daughter to like carry on the movement. So I like how it's like grounded in like the reality of like, yeah, like this is what happened, genocide happened, and
yeah,
we can move forward with it, and that's really just motivating for like the next generation. Yeah, this is really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm obsessed. Like, it's so good. Like, Tashina, I want like a poster of your of your work. Like,
thank you.
So.
How big are these? Because like looking at like front lines from the photo, it looked like it was a mural. Is it the size of the wall? Because I thought that was like molding at the top.
Yeah, I think it's 12 by 24. So it's a canvas.
Okay.
I know, but I do have another canvas, so I do want to make a part 2. So maybe if I find time, I could do that.
What would be in part 2?
It would be like the same thing, but I actually have some images from the Two-Spirit powwow, and I wanted to incorporate Two-Spirits also into my work. Because I want to be very inclusive. Like in this piece, I have more women and I only have like 1 boy. But I do want to add in families and men to show that we're all in this together. It's not just us women, but we have so many people behind us. So it's a work in progress.
But I wanted to say that I just really feel like your words and just your stories behind your pieces, and it's like really warming my chest. And your pieces are very beautiful, and they're all very different. Like your technique is really beautiful as well. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, I mean, you've mentioned that some of these pieces, I mean, I can only imagine like the hours and hours that have gone into these pieces. Like, was it healing? Was it frustrating? Like, was it like this, like a mirage of like, or a barrage of like feelings doing this? Or, yeah, like what was the experience making these pieces?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So with Frontlines, with each woman that I created, like I would sit down and just, I would just really just relax and find my calm and just create one woman. And I would put so much into it. I'd even draw her jewelry and look at her beadwork and try to replicate that with my pens, because I really wanted to show that it was her. And so I was proud of myself each time I made these women, you know, and then I'd send it to them. And when I got amazing feedback, and it just made me feel like I'm doing the right thing, that I'm on the right path, that I'm making them feel seen, you know, and not invisible, making them, you know, like they're here, you know. And I want to add more stuff to it, maybe more flyers, more banners. But yeah, so that piece was very healing, very rewarding. My We Bleed piece, that one was so empowering to create. Just making that piece, I felt like just radical, like this was my radical art right here, and I'm gonna shove it in your face, you know, and all you men are gonna look at it. And so that was probably my most daringest piece to create, but I am proud that I made that. So that one, I felt empowered. Also visibility. And my self-portrait, that one, I'm proud. I'm glad that I finally finished it. And I always told myself I'm going to create a piece of art and I'm going to frame it. And that was like one of my goals. And now I've created like so many pieces, and I've framed a lot of them because they're dear to me. You know, I created it. So thank you.
Thank you, Tashina. They really are gorgeous. And I would encourage people to go and look at the gallery where you can blow them up to the entire screen and appreciate every inch.
Aw, thank you.
They're really gorgeous.
Your baby.
So next up we have Angela's dance/video.
Thank you so much for having me and for, yeah, everybody else getting to listen to your stories and look at all of your art and hear it. I didn't think too much about what to say about this piece beforehand, but I kind of wanted to create something very simple. I noticed when I started to work on this piece, I was getting really uncomfortable with the being on camera aspect. And even though I perform and I've done a lot of very different type of like taking a lot of risk in my performances and being vulnerable, I thought I just had this really strange feeling that just being home in my own garden and being in front of a camera made me feel really strange. And it was kind of hard because I was also trying to video myself to see myself in the video. And I don't really like do stuff like that online, so I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, so then after dancing for a while, I chose to kind of just stare into the camera. And I took that video. And I felt like that had a more honest quality to it. So that's where this video kind of began, I guess. And for me, in terms of feminism, I feel like being able to keep myself honest and to really see myself, I feel is very important. To really stare at myself in the eyes was something that really like keyed me in and kind of was able to really sink deeper into the project at that moment. And the other video, I feel like it was a little harder to see it on my screen just now, but the video that's played in the back of me dancing, I filmed later in the night when it was dark outside with a spotlight. And that's kind of created more of the type of thing I'm used to performing into, where I'm not really seeing myself, but I'm much deeper connected into an internal process. And I also danced with one of my dance teacher, actually, she gave me a cloak. So I put it over my face and danced underneath it. So I was able to kind of create this deep internal place that felt private, but also I could just kind of really tap into more of my intuition and my sensations in my body. Yeah, the stuff I put on my face, there are ginkgo leaves that I painted gold for a performance I did a couple of years ago, and I still have a bunch of extra leaves in my apartment. And so, yeah, I was just playing around with it and exploring, and I thought also it looked like butterflies, so I was really excited about that, and just kind of tapping into my own sense of beauty and healing and caring and nurturing, those types of qualities that I can offer to myself, and then, kind of bring up and share.
Jess loves your piece. She thinks it's awesome and wants to see an entire piece. Video is challenging to do. Great job. Vic says that it has a Coachella quality, fully intended as a compliment.
Oh, thanks.
I like how you commented on how it allowed you to see yourself, or how it was uncomfortable at first. But also, like, to you, it looked like, or to her, it looked like butterflies. For me, watching it, I was waiting for them to kind of peel back. Like, I saw it as you peeling back the layers and eventually getting more comfortable. And that's kind of how I took it. Just pieces just kind of flying off.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you could tell, but a piece did fly off during the video. But yeah,
Was it on the nose?
I think it was like a corner piece. It's kind of fast because it was really windy, but I actually felt really intense making that part of the video. And I felt like my face was, you can't really see my full face, but my lips are like quivering, and it felt very like when that piece fell off, felt exactly like what you were talking about, just kind of breaking away and
Awesome.
stripping down, you know? So thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Tracy Jane Gregory's Send Fire, which is an animation.
But hello, thanks for watching my work. I'm gonna try to keep it short. I just want to first say thank you to CCSF Collective for accepting my work and organizing all of this. Like I said earlier, I'm really excited to be a part of this space and to see and hear everyone's stories and work. It feels really important, especially right now since we're all so isolated. So it feels good to have community where I'm around like-minded folks and very accepting. So thank you. But next, I'm just gonna read the statement that I wrote for the piece, which is on the website as well. So I just first start off talking about what feminism means to me. So for me, it means helping everyone, not just female identified folks, to feel empowered as the person they are now, which ultimately means breaking down all social expectations surrounding identity. As an educator, specifically an English tutor at CCSF, I try to help students see that writing and art is a tool for empowerment, to share your voice and challenge the forces that bring us down. As an artist, I try to challenge expectation by queering my art forms, using hybridity to create work that defies genre. So this piece, Send Fire, is a piece that my partner, Craig Fowler, he might be in here somewhere, but he helped me create this piece, and it challenges genre through the images, text, and animation, but also embodies the trope of an evil woman. So women used to have great power as healers and leaders, but ever since the Inquisition, it really destroyed all that by making society afraid of the female body and female spirituality. So this piece is trying to challenge that fear head on in hopes that we can be more accepting of women in whatever form or body or identity she takes. And actually what Leda was talking about in the beginning about honoring the darkness within ourselves, that like our inner nihilist and like even our inner evils need nurturing. I feel like that relates a lot to the work that I try to do, because religion really has impacted my sexuality and gender, how I present myself to the world. And now I feel like I kind of want to embody what people are afraid of, just so there's nothing really to be afraid of anymore. So that's what I try to do as a person and in my work overall. That's it. Thank you.
How did you do it? I want to make animations.
So Craig was the one who actually did all the digital stuff. He used Photoshop, but I actually have all the pieces next to me I can show you. So the first thing I created was the collage portion, and the forehead wasn't cut out yet. And then I traced the image onto another piece of paper so I could create the embroidery. And then Craig actually created this, here I can show you. Ooh. This box, and he cut out a hole in here so we could slide the text through. So when we cut the head out in the piece, this was coming by, and then from there it was just like a stop animation of taking all of the images and then putting into Photoshop and overlaying it. And then he was able to edit in the embroidery going. So
it's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was my first time doing something animated like this. So I really want to keep moving in this direction. It's cool. Yeah, definitely. The last piece that really got me into embroidery, I made this really giant quilt, all with photographs of women, like presented as like stereotypical women, and I used embroidery and like a sheen material to go over the images and like embroidered out their faces as a way to kind of liberate the women from their bodies in a way. So ever since then, I've kind of been using embroidery to like comment on, you know, women's work, weaving and embroidering, but as a way kind of to break out of the expectations that are limiting us. So
who is the woman? Is she somebody who should know?
I don't think so. It's actually from this photography book I have. It's like a yearbook of the year 1963. And I looked up the piece. Craig actually thought it might have been Sophia Loren, but it's not. I think it's just an unidentified woman.
What do the words say again on her forehead?
Oh, the words say here, he hitteth my soul, send the fire. So it's kind of a comment on religion again, and if we're seen as evil, you know, just bring it on. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here and seeing my work.
Embrace the shadow, she. I love it, Tracy. Well done. By Melissa. Tracy, is that a church song?
Actually, yes, the text I got is from a really old book of hymns. So, I mean, I'm not familiar with the songs, but it sounds like Catherine.
So we had only one anonymous submission. I know that they are a CCSF student. They did this as acrylic on cardboard, which you can tell from some of the texture. And they provide a very short artist statement that says, "Women and the earth are unbearably connected. We must fight and protect each other." And there are decapitated pilgrims by the looks of it.
I'm thinking of the Manifest Destiny.
It made me think about gaslighting, because that's the form of abuse I've suffered, and how it's something that can be hard to prove, and so it's even more that women need to stick together when it's like that.
I like to think of it as the colonists are small and insignificant, and they are something that we can easily decapitate. So, yeah,
it's a very revolutionary sort of standpoint, isn't it? Very strong colors.
Is it also horribly basic that I'm getting like mermaid imagery, or is that just?
I think that's just because it's May.
Okay.
Although she doesn't have like defined legs, so that's understandable. Like the legs are fused together into the earth.
Yeah, I kind of see it as like tree roots. So maybe that is likening her to like Mother Earth or Mother Nature. And really, maybe it's nature that is really going to end the colonization.
There's like a recycling sort of element to it that bridges to the nature by using cardboard as the surface medium. Nature will end colonization by Leda and Craig Fuller thought possibly Mother Earth. Decolonize it. I cannot speak Spanish and I apologize. Satan, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Maybe. Sweet.
Hey y'all, how's it going? I'm grateful to be here and I'm super honored to witness all the amazing things you have chair. My piece is called Decoloniza tu ser, and I was inspired by what I wanted to like show in this piece is that due to colonization and also because of the patriarchy, women bodies and trans bodies are usually the most policed and like colonized and controlled. And for example, women's bodies are like historically they have been like only their only purpose has been like as a reproductive like being, and they are chained into like exploring themselves and going further other than reproduction. And also nature has been like colonized, and like nature has been part of nature has been made illegal, and like and which in reality there are so many healing properties, and which many natives use for their properties, and colonization and tied to like capitalism and all of this different systems like made it illegal so they can make profit through other like things. And my invitation is for people to like know each other, like know themselves deeply and explore their body and get in touch with nature. And yeah.
Is this is Vic. Did you intentionally use mushrooms because they're like, because we often refer to them as like when they sprout as like colonies? Is that why you like with referencing of like reclaiming our bodies?
My idea of using mushrooms is because mushrooms like come from nature, and some of them are like illegal, and they're super like powerful, like to help with like for example, some of them help with like mental health issues, and some others that are not like psychedelic help with so many different things. But that's a good point. That's a good like yeah.
Hi, Britney Spears here. So I was gonna say about the mushrooms. I don't know if anyone has seen that movie Fantastic Fungi, but what I learned was like from that movie was like humans, like our DNA is like really related, like closely related to mushrooms. Oh, what was the number? I'm so bad at numbers. Like by 99 point something percent were like related to mushrooms. So I was just thinking, oh, like is that like what you meant? I was gonna say something else, but yeah, they do cure like mental illnesses, and yeah, shrooms are the answer.
Yeah, like nature is super powerful, and like we have been made to believe that it's dangerous and that it's gonna be harmful for us, and it's like also being criminalized, and it's fucked up.
Sophia, are you still here? I know it's much later than
I am still here, and it is a little past my bedtime, but that's okay.
If it's any comfort, you are the last one. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm just old. It's okay. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit before we turn it on, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I do not normally operate in film. I am a sculptor, but the idea of I latched onto the virtual part of Virtually Feminist because, you know, I'm grappling with this need to present my work, which is an in-person, three-dimensional media, and to make that accessible to people at a distance. And that's particularly important right now. I have an immune-compromised partner. I am not leaving. Even if they open it up, we are staying in place, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me. But so I decided to transport several of the pieces that I've been working on recently into video format. And before, the purpose of these pieces, what they examine is when we talk about feminism, we often, and we're trying to sell someone who doesn't consider themselves to be a feminist on feminism, we give them the worst possible examples. We talk about the murder rates and violence against women and whatnot. And our system, the place where we have landed at the end of the avalanche of history here is good for no one. It is an imbalanced, improper system that is not sustainable to life and benefits almost no one. And even the people that seem to economically benefit from it are not benefiting from it in the more deeper sense. There is a soullessness to the entire system. And so these women that are being portrayed, when I tell people the name of the piece, especially other women, they assume that this is scorn against women everyone loves to hate. And that is exactly the opposite point. So hopefully keep in mind, this is meant to be that those who seem to benefit the most, the trophy wives, the women who have essentially offered themselves up on the altar of patriarchal capitalism, and even down to surgically altering themselves for the benefit of one man's gaze. Even these people are suffering under a system of oppression. It's also a pun, so there's that. And with that, go ahead.
It's very hard to believe that you've never done filming before.
No.
You have a mastery of lights that you don't really, I guess you wouldn't assume for a more traditional media.
Yeah, I was curious about the light as well, because you played a lot with the shadow, you know, which like is a reflection, a mirror, which I think adds kind of to the playfulness of this and like kind of the silly mockery. And as soon as it started showing the horns, you know, I was muted, but I was laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, if you were able to show these sculptures live, would you have done something similar with the lighting and shadows, or no?
Something, not the movement, obviously, but the casting of the shadow and the horns against the wall and how you encounter the pieces when you enter a room makes it much more monumental. And I have shown one of them in physical space. That one I finished about 6 months ago. They take a long time. These ones I rushed to finish for this. I had to repair one that fell off the wall. So there's that, yeah. But the light in the film is primarily meant to indicate time as well as to give depth. So, you know, the sun setting, time passing, your value fading. If what you are valued by is purely physical use, then yeah, that goes away.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm like, this is Vic. I'm like super curious how it's like received, because I imagine it's like a full spectrum, like as far as like how does that white privileged man experience it, and yeah, like what comments have you gotten so far?
So it's really interesting because I really find that the most effective feminist art is something that sends a rather stark message to those who are in the know and is a slow conversion for those who do not. So I have found that I have had some pretty repugnant men see it, and they of course do not like it. And the number one reason is because these supposedly feminine women are not exhibiting feminine traits like hair and eyebrows and jewelry and things of that nature. Only one of them has eye makeup on, you see what I'm saying? And that seems to be their one thing where they're like, oh, but they're not hot. And then you have the average person who is not a self-identified feminist, but who is sort of repelled and fascinated at the same time. And I think that's a good mixture. It leads to curiosity. You ask questions, you want to know why. And I think that's the most common response that I get. And I think that's why I chose the music that I did. To dramatize it hilariously. I can't help but smile when it's going because it's just so, I don't know, intense. I think I need to work on my video technique, but thank you.
Sophia, can you talk a little bit about the colors, the pink and purple?
So I intentionally did not want to use natural color. I don't even use natural colors on the plaques. One of them is crimson, the other is blue, one is black. Just because I wanted to separate a little bit from the realism so that it's not totally horrifying, particularly for saleability, right? Because I want them to be marketable, but also because they hit a more contemporary element with the colors. They have their own beauty, and you can appreciate them. I can appreciate them aesthetically, even though it is horrifying when you really think that you have a head on the wall. But my original inspiration for this was actually another horrifying thing. I was in Phoenix, and I walked into a rather kitschy gallery, and all sorts of fake, not made by Native American, but claimed to be made by Native American. And one of the items that didn't notice at first was sort of hidden up on a wall in a corner was a Native American man's head mounted like a trophy, but not an actual head. And this was not seen in any way as horrific and dehumanizing, and had been there for probably 20 years. And of course the colors, yeah, it was appalling, but the colors were bright and jubilant, and it was, a celebrated piece of decor. So, yeah. A decorative element that is horrifying, if that helps answer the question about color. No, I'm a sculptor. I sculpt them out of clay, and then I make a mother mold, and then I cast them in a slush casting of polymer. So they're hollow, if that makes sense. So I roto cast them like this. Yeah. That's part of what takes so long, is the number of steps in the process. The molding of the face, the initial mother molds, the supporting shell, and then the casting and polishing up the castings.
Do you make multiple impressions of the mold, or like do you have more than one in each edition?
I have
If that
two.
makes sense.
Right now, I am currently sculpting the third one. I'm almost done with that one. So there are 2 heads there. As you can see, there are 3 heads, but 2 of them are from the same mold.
Would you like make a piece with metal? Because then I just feel like it's such a play on, the whole concept of, the like it really being a trophy, really something that's like shiny. And also like, because I mean, like that sort of casting is so like age old and so incredibly difficult to do. And it's like, yes. Have you considered also using like metal to make these pieces, or are you just like, you're done with these pieces, you want to kind of move on to the next project?
Well, that would be cool, but it's a very hot process, and I do this in my garage. My studio is my garage, and getting set up for a particular methodology of sculpture is not cheap. So, I mean, like, I would love to get into welding and metallurgy and whatnot, but that would be, that might not be in my near future, but that would be awesome. But I am working on another piece that I wasn't able to finish in time, which is another one of these heads. But this one I finished by, she is covered in drips. Drips are cascading from her face. And I am currently applying gold leaf to her. So it is as though she has been poured over with gold. So, kinda.
Yeah.
Wondering if you could talk more about the process, about why you chose those horns. They look like gazelle horns, and I'm assuming you're evoking like African animals, savanna animals that were, trophy in the traditional sense, or is there like some kind of Satan folklore in there?
No, I really tried to avoid the demonic element and implications, but I'm also, I was trying to avoid racial implications as well. But basically everything that has an interesting pair of horns or antlers is hunted by men and put up on a trophy. There's a really fascinating taxidermy shop in Mission District, and they have a giraffe head. They're of course all ethically obtained, inherited pieces, but yeah. So on the purple head, the longer horns, those are impala horns that I'm imitating there. And then springbok is the sort of curled one. And then the others are just white-tailed deer. But yeah, essentially anything that people can hunt down and put on their wall, and they do.
I'm wondering if there's also like commentary on gender, because isn't it only male animals that have horns?
No, actually, that is the majority, but it's not entirely the case. There are quite a few breeds of cow where they all have horns. It's not just the bulls. And usually I believe there are several breeds of deer where they will get the smaller horns, but not the larger. But the gender element is, maybe it's inconsistent, but it's more, if I just had the head, it wouldn't strike the same chord. I wanted it to be that these were special. They were hunted down, they were collected, then they were tired of. You see what I mean? And to strike that element, I needed the horns.
Are the eyelashes like real eyelashes that you buy at the beauty store? How'd you make those?
Yeah, those are the plastic ones, the falsies with the clear band. But I permanently adhered them. I didn't use makeup glue. I made a mistake when I first made them. I used a pair of old falsies that I had, and that was a terrible idea because it left makeup on it, and I couldn't get it off, and I kept having to repaint it, so that was over. And they're airbrush painted, so to get a very particular texture. So I've had to use 1500 grade sandpaper to get things off and sand it down particularly just to get the right smooth sheen with the airbrush. So it was bad when the one fell. That was a pain.
Sounds just like regular makeup. Like it sounds just as painful as applying regular makeup, but yes.
I want to thank you for participating and spending an hour and a half extra more than I asked for. I feel like this was really successful and helped people feel more connected when it's very difficult right now. Thank you to everyone who submitted and who's asked questions, and y'all are just awesome, and thank you so much.